Welcome to a live Third Apron podcast. I am your host, Yossi Goslin, NBA salary cap analyst. With me, as always, my great co-host, Sam Quinn. Lots of stuff to discuss over the past 12 hours. We finally got a couple more trades. Been about 2+ weeks since we got the first one. So now things are starting to heat up. If you are new to Third Apron, it's been a very fun week talking about trade rumor speculation, all that stuff. Please subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get podcasts. Please leave a like, comment, review, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following me and Sam on Twitter. We're going to have excellent trade deadline analysis as soon as deals happen. We've got some really good stuff to just add on to that. I've got great salary cap analysis instantly. So now's the best time of year to follow us. So first, we're going to talk about the big trade that happened last night. Just want to give credit where credit's due. The great people over at the Stein line, Mark Stein, Jake Fisher, with another precursor report. I think it was 2 days ago. They were talking about the Cavs being a series suitor for Keon Ellis, and that would be as part of a Hunter trade. Then my guy Michael Scotto was reporting about how Dennis Schroeder could also be a part of it. So just great reporting all around. Of course, no one could have predicted the Bulls would be involved because it's impossible to predict what they're going to do. But let's just start with them really quickly because not too much to say. Overall, good work by them. They had the remainder of that Zach LaVine trade exception that they generated last year. They used the remainder of it to take on Dario Saric and 2 second-round picks. So use it or lose it situation because that was about to expire tomorrow. So pretty good work by them. They get 2 seconds. Only thing is neither project to be that valuable. It's a Nuggets 2027, so Nuggets should be probably pretty good. That should be like low 50s at least next year. And then a 2029 that is lesser of Milwaukee, New York, Detroit. So not the most valuable seconds in my opinion.
Can I stop you overall, and throw something at you really quick?
That's basically it.
Yeah, I'm just, as I hear this and I hear what those picks are, I almost feel like the Bulls did this more to sound smart than to actually gain value because those are bad second round picks, but they're getting a lot of praise today and they're getting praise yesterday. Like, whoa, look at the Bulls taking on money second round picks. That's something that a smart team would do. So like, I feel like this is as much a press release as it is a basketball move.
Yeah. Compared to a lot of the trades they've done in recent years, which isn't that many. Remember, there was a big gap between 2021 when they signed and traded Lauri Markkanen, and then the Josh Giddey, Alex Caruso trade. They hadn't made any trades involving players under contract for like 3 years. Now they're starting to work on getting draft picks, not first round picks, but second round picks, facilitating trades. They still had, they're one of the few teams that have the tax space to facilitate a salary dump. So it's fine. Like, I don't think they're really going to do anything better with that tax space. And they still have some more left.
Cheap, Yossi. Don't you dare call the Bulls cheap. No, they took on Dario Saric.
I didn't even use that word. What?
They are we were all thinking it. I'm just saying all we do is call the Bulls cheap, but no, they took on Dario Saric for second round picks. They are throwing cash around, baby.
Yeah, so that's it on the Bulls. So I think we should start with the Cleveland side of things. I think the consensus online is that the Cavs came out of this on top. So they haven't looked like a contender all year. They have a significant drop off compared to last year. And they have the highest payroll this season. They're the only team above the second apron. They have a $400 million roster, inefficient spending. So they already don't have any avenues to improve the team, mainly because being a second apron team, they have restrictions, like they can't aggregate salaries. And even if they did, they don't really have that much draft equity. They have 1 first round pick they could trade, which they probably shouldn't move right now, and only 4 second round picks before this trade. So they just needed to save money. It's a sensible thing to do. Chances are they're going to be just as good, if not even maybe a little bit better, no matter what they do, just by saving some money, because it just doesn't make sense to spend all this much. So DeAndre Hunter was extremely expendable with just a lot of the wings they have, even though Strus has been out. Jalen Tyson coming along was what really made him expendable, and they're able to flip him into Keon Ellis, which is the type of player they were hoping to get when they got Lonzo, but they have to take on Dennis Schroeder. So now they have a pretty crowded backcourt, and Schroeder does have another year left on his deal. But the Cavs save $50 million and get the best player in the deal. And all it really cost them was 1 second-round pick to have the Bulls take on Saric. So overall, great process by the Cavs, all things considered. The Hunter experience just didn't work for them, cost them a lot of seconds, cost them some swaps, one of which is going to be a pretty valuable one. They're going to drop 7 spots down in the first round as a result of one of the swaps they gave to the Hawks. But like I said, I think they just needed to save money, and they save about like $70 million next year too. So they will be able to keep Keon Ellis. We'll get into that a little bit more. But yeah, any other thoughts you want to get into as far as what the Cavs have done and what they might do next?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, we're going to be here for a while. First things first, one of my Twitter commenters put this very, very eloquently, I thought. Did you ever have those two kids in a class growing up in school where the teacher had to sit them on other ends of the room because if you put them together, they would cause too much trouble? That's
I think we've all been guilty of being on one side of that.
That's the Kings and the Bulls, where like I feel like they shouldn't get together for trades because they're kind of running a charity for the smart teams. Where if you go back, we're now in the third consecutive calendar year where the Bulls, the Kings, and one of the smart teams has made a trade. And even though the Bulls have kind of done okay in those trades, the smart team has always come away as the big winner. 2024, it was the DeMar DeRozan, Harrison Barnes cap dump, where the Spurs get Harrison Barnes and they get unprotected swap rights in 2031 from the Kings. Last year, it was the De'Aaron Fox trade, where again, the Bulls come out okay because they get off of Zach LaVine and they get their pick back so they can go play in the play-in like they always do. And now this year, where like the Bulls did pretty well, fine. The Cavs, this is like a home run for them. And the Kings, we'll get into them a little bit more as we get deeper in. I don't really get this for them at all. So I just find it funny that like the Bulls and the Kings can't really help themselves. You described it as the Cavs having to take on Dennis Schroeder. I want to push back on that a little bit. We're in the middle of a very interesting trend for Dennis Schroeder. This is his 9th team in the last 5 seasons. If you go back to 2023, the second stint with the Lakers, a trend that has developed is that every time he changes teams, he alternates from being really good to really bad. So 2023, he signs with the Lakers for the minimum, and he has a really good year. He's a very important part of that team that makes the Western Conference Finals, right? I think that was that team. Either he was very good in that last year with the Lakers. Then he signs with the Raptors for the mid-level, and they have him for half a season, and they're like, yeah, no thanks. We're going to cap dump him. I think that was in a Spencer Dinwiddie trade. I can't remember the specifics of it. He goes to Brooklyn. He's so good for the Nets that they have to trade him literally the first moment that they're able, when Golden State is eligible to trade DeAnthony Melton, because he's winning them too many games when they're trying to tank. Then he goes to Golden State and he's so bad that the Warriors have to trade him 6 weeks later because it's clearly not working. And then he becomes this key bench fixture for the Pistons, and his value gets up so much that the Kings give him a 3-year mid-level that they then spend the entire season trying to dump. So if you follow the Dennis Schroeder trend, we're on the good cycle now. So he's going to be good for the Cavs. And they needed somebody to replace the scoring that Ty Jerome gave them last year, right? Like we talked about Keon Ellis replacing some of the stuff that they hoped they were going to get from Lonzo Ball. But I also think Dennis Schroeder is going to give them some of the stuff that Ty Jerome gave them. He's obviously not the shooter that Ty Jerome is, but having that kind of microwave bench scorer, they're 23rd in the NBA in bench scoring. Their offense is 10 points or 100 possessions worse when Donovan Mitchell goes to the bench. Like, I think Dennis is like probably an asset for them. And we can get into some of the ways in which they can use this newfound financial flexibility they have. I have some kind of bold ideas. I think it'll likelier be smaller, but the
before
Cavs
we get
really
into
come
that,
away well in every regard.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the Schroeder stuff that you just mentioned. This is something that we did discuss when we did our draft last month about players we want to draft within the categories that you made. So far, I'm on the board. I did pick Schroeder just because Schroeder just always gets traded. I don't think trade season truly begins until he's traded. So that's like the good indicator that things are getting busy now. But you're right. Yeah, he does yo-yo. He'll go from he'll be productive one team and then another team maybe overvalues him or wants to put him in a higher role than he's supposed to get. And then he goes there and he doesn't meet the expectations. Then he goes for a smaller role elsewhere. And now we're in this cycle where he was, so like the Warriors, they brought him in. They actually wanted him to start. That did not work out. Goes to the Pistons. He's a great backup. Then the Kings bring him in because they want him to start. Nope, that's not what he really is. He's a high-end backup point guard. And now he's going to go to the Cavs with much lower expectations. And yeah, I think he's going to do a little better. I don't know if he's going to meet the highs of when he was with like the Nets or the Pistons, but he's definitely going to do a little better. Schroeder has now been traded 8 times. He's tied for second most times traded. The number one is Trevor Ariza, which also is kind of cheating because he was traded like 3 or 4 times within like 24 hours. I expect Schroeder's going to beat the record, especially with the type of money he's making. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he suits up for 1 game for the Cavs this week. So that counts as the team he's played for, and then he's traded yet again because they are trying to save more money. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he should do a little better with the Cavs. Technically, there is kind of a bad contract. Like, they clearly did not want to bring that money in, but it'll be okay. I think it'll make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one benefit to the Kings, not to transition into the Kings yet, is that he has $4.3 million guaranteed for the 27-28 season, which Hunter does not. So technically the Schroeder contract goes a little bit longer. It's also substantially smaller, but it does technically go a little bit longer. So that's one of the reasons the Kings probably wanted to get off of that contract. But I think ultimately, like, Dennis Schroeder at mid-level money, if you can accommodate that contract, is probably reasonable value as a bench guy if you're playing him 15, 20 minutes a game. He's a useful defender. He's not versatile because he's so small, but he's very good as a point of attack guy against small, quick guards. So, like, that's a useful thing that the Cavs are going to have. Do you want to talk about the financial flexibility, or do you want to talk about the basketball flexibility that the Cavs have? Because they're now, like, both of those are pretty reasonable.
So let me just touch on that first, and then you have some ideas of what they want to do, what they could do next. So the Cavs this year, by doing this trade, they reduce their payroll by about like $7 million. So they go from a $400 million roster almost, so it's like 392 to 341 total expenses. I think they are going to save some more money. They are about $14 million above the second apron. They were $22 million above it before the trade. I suspect they're going to try to get below it. And there's a couple ways they could go about it. The easiest would be if they could reroute Schroeder, but I suspect they're stuck with him. Seems like there's probably no market for him, and they kind of had to just take him on to make the trade work. Obviously, you could trade like Allen or Strus. That also helps as well. But assuming they keep all those guys, they could do something like dumping Lonzo, maybe Dean Wade. But at the very minimum, they could do Thomas Bryant and Larry Nance. So then that gets them just $730K below the second apron. They'd be at 13 players. I did the math. They can then stay under the that 14 players for 2 weeks, and by the time those 2 weeks are up after the trade deadline, they could convert Naquan Tomlin, make him their 14th player on a 1-year deal. That would fit it would be just under 730K. It'd be like 650 something K. So they could do that just to fill out the rest of the roster, convert Naquan. Anything
Can
on
I
that?
question your math
Sure.
really quickly? Wouldn't this take the Cavs to 12 players, not 13, if they got off Lonzo, Nance, and Bryant?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's that is my mistake. So they probably might need to trade another player, someone a little more expensive like Dean Wade. But we'll see. We'll see how they make it work. Maybe they don't get fully below the second apron, but I think they'll figure something out. Then just want to add quickly for next year, because some people might be thinking, can they even afford to keep Keon Ellis next year? They already have a pretty expensive roster. I think they will. I don't think it's going to be a problem. So they were looking at a $400 million roster now. For expenses next year, it's down to $330. They saved $70 million. So just from that, I think the savings going from Hunter, they saved $10 million on the payroll to Schroeder. That gives them enough room where they could then bring back Keon Ellis. We could discuss what we think his next contract's at. But keep in mind, this still factors in Lonzo Ball, who's got that team option, which if they don't trade him, they'll definitely decline it. So they're probably going to be looking at a payroll at the highest end, something like this, maybe a little bit more, while still being able to keep Keon Ellis. So I think they'll keep him. He's going to be extension eligible later this month. I don't know if they're going to need to extend them just yet. Maybe because you could extend them through June 30th. But I think they're as long as he plays well, there is a long-term future for him in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, I think they can re-sign him. I don't think he's likely to re-sign during the season, at least. I think he's going to play well, and I think his agents probably understand that there is a fair amount of cap space out there, and all of the teams with money this offseason could use a player like him. Case in point, the Lakers were one of the teams most frequently linked to him. I think it makes sense for him to go into free agency and try to put, the Jazz and the Nets and the Wizards and the Cavs and the Lakers up against each other. I think he'd probably do pretty well in that scenario, especially if he does play well for them in the playoffs, and I think he will. So, I mean, he's in a good situation. I think the Cavs can re-sign him. I don't necessarily think that's a fait accompli, but either way, I think this is a best case scenario for Keon Ellis. I mean, all year he has been a cause celeb of the NBA hipster community, and now he has gotten to a good team. I don't think he's going to start. I don't think he's going to be like a 30-minute player. I think he'll do very well in his role, playing 15, 20 minutes a game. And I think it could be a way for him to kind of show the rest of the league, I'm a winning player. I was not infected by Sacramento. You should pay me this summer. So I think this is going to work out very, very well for him. So as you covered, the easiest way to get under the second apron would be to trade Dennis Schroeder to the Brooklyn Nets. They can afford him. The question would be, how much does it take for the Nets to give up basically all of their cap space to take on Dennis? Like, are you doing that? Would the Nets do that for 4 second-round picks? Because that's what the Cavs have left. My suspicion is the answer is no. They would want more than that. Would you do a first-round swap to take on Dennis Schroeder? I think the Nets might be a little bit more amenable to that. Maybe if you include a couple seconds to do that. Cleveland still has the 2031 first round pick tradable. The last pick they gave up in the Donovan Mitchell trade was in 2029. So I know it seems like the Cavs are out of picks or have traded away all their picks. They actually have a fair bit of first round capital to work with relative to some of these other teams where like the Knicks kind of have nothing and the Wolves have like nothing. The Cavs can do swaps in 2030, 2032, and they can do an unprotected pick in 2031. So they do have a fair bit of flexibility there. Now, if they do get under the second apron, either in an individual trade or as part of something bigger, that opens some doors for them. Because something that we've talked about a lot during this trade season and even going back to last offseason is that the Cavs could not aggregate salaries because they were a second apron team. If you are not a second apron team, you can aggregate salaries. And if you can aggregate salaries, you can do a lot more. I'm not going to say you can do anything, but that opens a lot of doors for you. I'll bring up the first name and I'll mostly shoot it down pretty quickly. Can they go trade for LeBron James now? Can they go trade for LeBron James? I think the answer is still probably no. I did do the math on this. So say you trade Dennis Schroeder to Brooklyn, you get off that contract. You still have to send out more money than you take back to trade for LeBron because you're still over the first apron. If you were to combine Jared Allen, Lonzo Ball, and Max Strus for LeBron, that's still $8 million short of LeBron's salary. So now you're talking about including Sam Merrill and then including Dean Wade as well, so you can clear out enough money to fill out the rest of your roster. Aside from that being problematic for the Lakers, who don't want to take on all this extra money, that's a 5-for-1 trade that depletes all of your depth. So I think in all likelihood, LeBron is still off of the table. The one scenario I kind of concocted where it would work would be if you traded Darius Garland as well and you took back like a $25 million wing, like if you did something with Trey Murphy for Darius Garland, or if you nudged your way into the Giannis situation where the Knicks were getting Giannis and you turned Garland into Mikal Bridges, maybe that would be a situation where it works. I don't think LeBron is all that likely, but I just brought up another name that I think is worth talking about. I actually just brought up 2 more names that I think are worth talking about. The Cavs now, whether they're motivated to do so, I don't know, and whether Giannis would be interested, I don't know, have a pretty clean path to being able to like financially acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo if they wanted to pursue this. So the trade I have up right now is they would trade Lonzo Ball to the Nets and they would give 4 second-round picks for the Nets to take on Lonzo Ball. And then they would trade the Bucks, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Jalen Tyson, the unprotected 31 pick, and unprotected swaps in 30 and 32. Do I think that's a trade the Bucks should make? I would lean no. I will say, however, I think that is a better offer than the Knicks can make right now. That is a better offer than the Timberwolves can make right now. Maybe that changes if those teams loop in a third or a fourth team. But like just in a pure 2-team trade, I think Cleveland beats both of them. And I think Cleveland is kind of in the same ballpark as Miami and Golden State. If Giannis wants to win, he wants to make the finals, staying in the East is obviously a priority. If he could link up with Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and a bunch of shooters, that would be a great situation for him to contend. The question would be, would he be willing to stay in Cleveland? I don't know what the answer to that is. So I'll stop right here. Yossi, like, do you think the Cavs can or should get into the Giannis sweepstakes now?
I don't know. That is tough. I remember when the LeBron speculation started, that was basically the offer they would have had to do to just to make the money work. Yeah, I'd rather do that for Giannis for sure. You can argue that there might be teams out there, and not the Bucks, but there could be teams valuing Garland as a full draft guy despite the down season he's having. Like coming into this season, after what Bane went for, you could argue Garland's worth like that type of haul. So it could be also a long-term play where if the Bucks aren't good anytime soon, okay, at least they have that the asset in Garland that they could flip them later. So I think the value is definitely there. Probably the best player they can conceivably get when you consider all the other teams that they've been linked to. Draft pick value is not really there. The Cavs would be able to trade another first round pick. That's the other thing. By getting under the second apron this year, next year they don't get their 2033 first round pick frozen. They'd be able to trade that as well. So I would suspect that the Bucks, if the Cavs were trying to get in on Giannis and Giannis had interest, it'd probably be more of an offseason thing. So they could maximize that offer. But generally speaking, I would be surprised if the Cavs do anything quite like this with the savings. I think it's mostly just to save money. And I don't know if they're in a position right now where, given the season they're having, if they feel comfortable trading more assets right now to bring in like a max level guy. The one name you didn't mention and might make some sense because you mentioned the Nets, if they're going to take on Schroeder or Ball.
That's the next name that I was going to go to.
Michael Porter Jr. is a little more feasible because you were thinking about a LeBron package that would have you sending out Allen, Lonzo, Strus, Merrill Wade. Michael Porter Jr. makes $13 million less than LeBron. So you could probably maybe keep two of those guys, two of the lower end guys from there. Like if maybe you could keep Wade and Merrill in that process. I haven't done the math, but that's maybe more so if they want to get aggressive, trade that one first round pick they could trade. Maybe that's what they could do. But I'm just expecting they're going to keep trying to save more money now. I think the roster as is I think it's all about internal improvement at this point. I don't know if like they got to just figure out how to reach the highs of last year. And I don't think there's a trade out there that's really going to change to improve that externally. I think they got to figure it out because Mobley has kind of stalled. He hasn't taken that extra step people were hoping, even though he is playing really well. Garland, when he's healthy, just hasn't been on the same level. They got to fix those things first and foremost.
So Garland has played a lot better lately. I think the last month or so has been very much a step in the right direction. You could also do Garland for Porter straight up and make the extra value for the Cavs. Just take on Lonzo, take on Nance, take on Thomas Bryant. Like we are trading Garland for Porter and getting under the second apron. That's another possibility that you could do. I don't think that's quite enough value for the Cavs, but it's a construction that at least makes some level of sense. I don't think Darius Garland is a full draft guy just because we've seen small guards are less valued now than they've ever been.
Yeah.
I think he's substantially more value than Trae Young or John Morant for a variety of reasons. But he is still a defensive liability at the highest levels. The injuries have been a problem. So I don't think he would get what Desmond Bane got either, where Desmond Bane, a lot of the appeal is that like he survives on defense. He's not great, but like you can be a great defensive team with Desmond Bane. I think Memphis ranked in the top 5 on defense a few times with Desmond Bane as a starter. I think, well, I guess the Cavs have had some pretty high defensive rankings with Garland too, but he's very vulnerable in the playoffs because of his size. I think Darius Garland is somebody that actually probably appeals more to a team like the Bucks than as like a flip candidate. I think he's more somebody that you could actually like try to build around a little bit, not thinking he's going to be your best player, but he's still, I think he's what, 25, right? He's still relatively young.
Something
He
like
is somebody who has been kind of playing second fiddle to Donovan Mitchell these last few years in Cleveland. There had been some rumblings in the past that he wanted his own team. Like maybe the Bucks could be that team. I don't know. I think there might be something to that. Another idea that I had that I think is worth throwing out. So what if there was a scenario where the Knicks were going for Giannis and they had to trade OG and Bridges? Could you do a scenario where the Bucks get OG and Garland, and they say we're going to try to be pretty competitive now. We're going to roll out a starting lineup of like Garland, Rollins, Anunoby, Portis, and Turner. And then the Cavs get Mikal Bridges to not only go from having a guard surplus to having some more wings, but also that saves them like $13 million, gets them close to the second apron. I haven't done the math on that. Could that make some sense? Because something to keep in mind is with Dennis Schroeder and with Keon Ellis, they're now pretty loaded at guard. So they could run out a healthy guard rotation without Darius Garland if they wanted to move him. But I think if they were going to move him, it would have to be for something pretty substantial, whether it was one of those Knicks wings or something for Giannis. I think Porter is probably a little low for them, but I guess that's a name we're throwing out. Like this opens some doors for them that had been previously closed because of the apron issues, I think.
I would say, yeah, I could see the Bucks doing that. Not necessarily to try to be good. I'm sure internally there is a little bit of motivation for that because they don't have their draft picks. But if it doesn't work out, these guys should retain high value in the future. So if they do need to trade them, they should be able to get at least 2, maybe 3 first round picks for each guy. So that could be the blueprint of what they end up getting. Maybe they don't get draft picks now, but they get players who have very high value themselves.
Yeah, again, I would not close the door on Giannis to Cleveland. I don't think it's likely. I just wouldn't close the door on it.
Yeah.
I think just something that I think is going on right now, and we're going to get into this a little bit more later with Portland. Giannis would probably like to get traded by the deadline because that allows him to sign an extension in the offseason. If he's traded in July, he won't be able to extend for 6 months, which goes into January, which creates some risk. So there might be a world in which the teams like the Knicks and the Warriors and the Heat, the kind of traditional big markets that would look at somebody like Giannis, are making lackluster offers, and the Bucks go to Giannis and say, look, those teams are not making trades that are not making offers that we're willing to take. If you want to get traded now, it's going to have to be somewhere a little bit less conventional, like Cleveland or like Portland, where they will be able to extend you in the offseason, and you will probably have a chance to be pretty good with those teams. It's just not the glamour market that you maybe want. It's your call, Giannis. We will compromise with you. We will trade you at the deadline. It's just going to have to be to one of these teams instead of one of those teams. So that's why I probably wouldn't rule out Cleveland, but I don't think they're especially likely. Have we done everything we need to do for the Cavs? Can we move on to the Kings?
Yes, let's move on to the Kings. And we both have pretty similar thoughts on this. I was trying to understand, like in the past month or so, what is it about DeAndre Hunter recently that is just so underwhelming? And I think it's mostly like with Schroeder, as I discussed earlier, expectations. Because the Cavs acquired DeAndre Hunter last year with the intent that he'd be the starter at the wing, close for them, and be their solution at 3 and D. He's not a 3 and D wing. He's got the 3 mostly, but he doesn't have the sterling defensive reputation. He's not that type of guy. So then, like, he's all right. We got the reporting earlier, like a couple days ago by Brett Siegel. He's talking about how the Lakers could be involved getting DeAndre Hunter. And then there's like a a way it would involve Rui Hachimura. And I'm thinking, like, why do the Lakers do that? Do they need to give up an asset to get DeAndre Hunter? Because I don't get how that's improving the Lakers. And then I realized they're kind of like essentially the same guy for the most part, like very similar in almost in like most ways. Hunter is just a little more overpaid and there's higher expectations for him. So I don't get this for the Kings. First of all, the value's bad. You gave up arguably what a lot of people like, as you mentioned, the hipsters feel in the NBA is the best player in Keon Ellis. And you give up a second to subsidize the Cavs saving $50 million. So that's number one, bad process there. Second, you're the worst team in the league. What is Hunter doing for you? Nothing this year. What is he doing for you next year? Probably not that much other than costing you an extra $10 million next year in the payroll. Now they're like $13 million above the tax line for next year. So they have a whole nother issue to figure out how to deal with these extra contracts that they have that no one else already wants. Do you know you have a top 5 pick coming in this draft? Chances are you're going to get a wing, and that wing is going to be much better than DeAndre Hunter. I know that ever since they traded Harrison Barnes, DeMar DeRozan at the 3, that just was not a good fit at all because all these guys that they have, they need the ball. Harrison Barnes, it's like the quintessential, one of the greatest fifth options for like playoff teams, for contenders. Like for a guy who doesn't need to shoot the ball, doesn't need it that much, plays solid defense. That's what the Kings like, he was the common denominator of their whatever success they had. And they traded him. DeAndre Hunter is, I don't know if he's going to be that, if that's what they're going for, to like replicate kind of what Harrison Barnes was. Because to me, DeAndre Hunter seems more like maybe like the DeMarcus Cousins of Harrison Barnes, where like it's a big name, like big numbers, but overall, I don't think the impact is quite there. So I don't like this for the Kings. I figure you've got similar sentiments.
Yeah, I guess I just want to know, like, what is the version of this trade that is a success for the Sacramento Kings? Because if DeAndre Hunter is who we think he is, which is kind of the outline of a 3-and-D guy and not an actual 3-and-D guy who's overpaid, who is paid into next year when if you don't make other trades, and we think they probably will make other trades, but if you don't, you're going to be pretty deep into the tax and you're probably going to have to pay assets to get off of money, then the trade is a failure from that front. If he plays well, then you're looking at winning games you don't want to win, because right now you have the worst record in the NBA headed into a generational draft class. Like right now you kind of have a golden ticket where if you finish with the worst record in the league, you cannot pick any worse than 5th. It is a draft with at least 3 players considered possible franchise guys and more guys after that who under the right circumstances could potentially be all-stars. The last thing you want to do is win 2 or 3 extra games, because with how tight the bottom of the standings are, I think the 5 worst teams are all within like 1 or 2 wins of each other right now. Winning 2 or 3 extra games means the difference between having the best lottery slot and having the 4th best lottery slot or the 5th best lottery slot, and potentially really hurting yourself in the draft. And then if he plays really well, your roster isn't equipped to make the playoffs this year or next year anyway, right? Like this is a rebuild, broadly speaking. So by the time you're ready to win again, if he's playing well, you're going to have to sign him to another really expensive contract. You've already signed Keegan Murray to a similar contract, and they're pretty similar in theory players. Like Keegan Murray is actually that guy. Like Keegan Murray is legitimately a good 3-and-D player. DeAndre Hunter is sort of just the theoretical version of that. But do you really want to be paying $25-30 million a year for multiple guys like that while you're still figuring out what you are? Do you want to box yourself in where it's like, oh, like we don't have a big man of the future, so we're going to take a center, even though the wing is really the best player on the board or whatever. Like, I don't know what the version of this trade that is a success for the Kings is. I've seen some reporting that the Kings really want to have cap space in 2027. So I guess getting off of the $4 million owed to Dennis was a priority, but also like Sacramento, like you're not Miami. You're not the Lakers. Like, what do you think you're doing with that cap space? Remember all the way back, I think it was 2015, when the Kings desperately wanted cap space to sign Monte Ellis. So they traded the Sixers an unprotected pick and an unprotected swap. I think both of which wound up pretty high in the lottery. I think the swap was what got Philly from 5 to 3 in the Tatum draft. Obviously, they messed that up and they traded up for Fultz, but like I think that's the highest swap or one of the higher swaps that's ever conveyed. And then they got another lottery pick. I think that was the pick that they traded in the Fultz trade for Tatum, but it was a lottery pick. And then Monte Ellis signed with the Pacers. Like, the Kings are not a desirable destination, right? Like, I don't know what they expect to do with that cap space. Cap space is nice. You can use it in a variety of ways. You can use it as a facilitator. You can take on draft picks to take other people's bad money. But you just did that for the Cavs. DeAndre Hunter is the bad money here. So, like, I just don't. What are they trying to accomplish? And by the way, if that's your goal, you know what you could have gotten draft picks for is Keon Ellis making $2 million, right? Like, a lot of teams were interested in Keon Ellis. And by the way, these were not like schmuck teams. It was the Spurs. It was the Celtics, the Cavs, obviously. Several of the smartest teams in the NBA, teams that are consistently winning, are beating down your door like, hey, we'd really like Keon Ellis. We think he's good. And the Kings are over here like, no, we know better than the Celtics. We know better than the Spurs. Keon Ellis is somebody that, like, we don't think we need to prioritize trying to keep. Do you want to go back and explain what happened in the offseason that made all this happen?
The Schroeder sign and trade?
No, well, the team option on Keon Ellis. Like, when the Kings could have gotten him on a team friend. So here's the basic. Keon Ellis, as many undrafted second-round success stories do, had a team option. And the way that team option worked was it would have allowed the Kings to keep him at like $2 million if they picked it up. However, the smarter move would have been to decline that team option. That would have made him a restricted free agent. That would have worked out best for both sides because as Keon Ellis, you're an undrafted free agent. You haven't made any money yet. You want to like get some long-term security. You're probably willing to sign for multiple years at below market just to like guarantee yourself life-changing, family never has to work again money. The Thunder do this all of the time. The Thunder did it with Lou Dort. They did it with Aaron Wiggins. They did it with Isaiah Joe. They did it last summer with Jalen Williams, the big Jalen Williams. It's like a pretty common tactic among smarter teams. The Kings instead decide we're going to pick up Keon Ellis's player or team option for $2 million or something like that, allowing them to keep Keon Ellis basically for the minimum. The trade-off,
and they use that flexibility to.
They used that flexibility to sign Dennis Schroeder, and the trade-off to that is that it means Keon Ellis would be an unrestricted free agent in 2026 when the whole market seems eager to try to acquire him and outpay him. So the writing has been on the wall all season that Keon Ellis was going to be gone. The irony of the Kings using Keon Ellis to dump Dennis Schroeder, the player that they signed with the flexibility that picking up the Keon Ellis option gave them in the first place, should not be lost on any of us. The Kings could have gotten Keon Ellis on a team-friendly deal last summer. They could have traded him for good draft value now at this year's deadline. Maybe not a first-round pick, but like, could you have gotten that Wizards top 8 protected pick from the Knicks that becomes 2 seconds? I think so. Like that, you could have gotten multiple good seconds to trade Keon Ellis. Instead, this saga ends with you taking money off of Cleveland's books for a player that Cleveland did not want because he hadn't played well all year. So I just don't know what to say about the Kings. I don't know what their plan is. I don't know what their vision of success in this trade is. It was a disaster of a transaction in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we just got them on every angle just now. Just look at their cap sheet now. Look at this. This is just a mess. They're already projected to be way over the luxury tax, over the first apron. Like they'll be over the second apron when you consider they need to fill out the rest of these roster spots. So they're not done. They're going to do more trades. I do find it interesting that now that they already made a trade with the Bulls, does that rule out the Bulls to potentially trade for Domantas Sabonis, like their most obvious suitor? Because then I don't know where Sabonis might be going.
Toronto's the other one.
Yeah, but the Raptors I think they'd have to trade like at least 2 first to swap Pirtle for him. So I would think DeRozan's gone first, like whether that's now or in the offseason, he's got that $10 million partial guarantee. He's gone. So technically, I think, yeah, they are sort of upgrading by going from DeMar to DeAndre just because I think you just want a better fourth, fifth option in Hunter than DeMar with the rest of what they got going on. Even though that's going to change, it's going to be like Nee Clifford will be elevated. They'll get someone with the number 1 pick. Then Monk, I suppose, is the other guy. Can they maybe trade him for someone making a little less money? So they'll do something. I think the biggest thing is, can you get off that 10 million partial guarantee? That kind of takes care of everything.
I think
it's not an enviable position.
Minnesota has been linked to Monk lately. If there was something like Dillingham and Conley for Monk, and like the Kings might have to give up some second round picks to get the Timberwolves to take on the Monk money, but I think Monk makes sense for the Wolves. If they can't get Kobe White would be my first choice for them. But that might be a way that they can do this. But I just don't know what the long-term vision here is. I don't know, man. Like I write front office rankings every February and every July. So once the trade deadline dust settles, I will be writing that on CBSSports.com. And I'm sure we will do an episode or multiple episodes talking about it. Spoiler alert, the Kings are going to be near the bottom.
It just seems like for whatever reason, the Kings front office, they just really like DeAndre Hunter. Feels like a Troy Weaver type situation where he just really likes this thing. He just really likes X player. He's got to bring him in. And a lot of the things said about how much the Kings like Hunter for his play and character and all that. So ultimately the Cavs, they're the big winners. They got lucky that a team wanted Hunter that much, despite how little he helped them. All right, so that's the trade. Anything else, or do you want to move on to the other trade / some Portland stuff that has been brewing recently?
We're just doing all-encompassing Portland stuff where we're going to spend 2 minutes on the actual trade that they made, and then we're going to spend 40 minutes on the fake trade that they kind of were reported to be interested in.
Okay, so let's just start on the Hawks side of things first. It's a very simple trade. They both swapped the minimum salary guys. The Hawks, they cash in on Vit Krejci, who's been an excellent, productive player on the minimum, great shooter, solid defender, and they get 2 second-round picks for him. When they brought in Corey Kispert, I figured now it's not that like Vit Krejci's not going to be in the rotation because the Hawks are always injured, but if they're fully healthy, Vit might not factor in that much. So I think it made sense for them to capitalize on his value. I would suspect that they wouldn't replicate this value in the future. This might be the peak. So they also take back, this is their old cap sheet. They take on Duop Reith, who is out for the year. They save a little bit more money, so they could still do another cap dump. So they would probably just waive Duop Reith, who's out for the year, or N'Faly Dante, who's out for the year. So it seems like it'll be a quieter deadline for the Hawks, just try to accumulate more draft assets. As for Portland, they just wanted to bring in another wing. So it is more interesting their side of things. They traded 2 seconds. They still have like 7, I think, left. They got like 7 second-round picks left. So just really quickly, and then we'll move on to the bigger stuff, but they've got like a crowded sort of wing rotation of like a minimum level-ish guys between Krejci now, Caleb Love, who's more of a guard, Sissoko, Rupert. They still need to clear 2 roster spots and save a little bit more money. They're $1.4 million above the tax, so they're going to want to clear 2 roster spots, save a little bit more money so they can convert Love and Sissoko. Do you think this has any bigger implications for anything bigger they might do beyond the 2-way conversions? Because they just have like this hodgepodge of minimum level wings now.
So first things first, Portland has the lowest 3-point percentage in the NBA, 33.6%. Vit Krejci is a very good 3-point shooter, so theoretically addresses the need. Somebody that I think could play minutes for them, but like you said, they have that logjam. I don't know what the final post-deadline roster is going to look like, but I like having Vit Krejci on that team. Vit Krejci also has 2 years left on a minimum deal. Very helpful if, say, you are about to trade for somebody making a max contract, ... So should we just address the elephant in the room and say that yesterday there was reporting from Mark Stein and Jake Fisher that the Portland Trailblazers, considered by most, including us, to be the likeliest facilitators of a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, considering that they own Milwaukee's control over Milwaukee's first-round picks in 2028, 2029, and 2030, they themselves may have registered interest in Giannis Antetokounmpo at the deadline. So where do you want to go with this?
I think if you're the Blazers, it makes sense to check in, especially with all the speculation about how the Blazers, as a facilitator, that they've got the assets to help the Bucks get what they want and help another team get them. And people have replied to me when we've talked about it, when I posted clips about this topic. Well, why don't the Blazers just trade for him? If they've got all these things, the Bucks picks in 28 through 30, why don't they just trade for him? And it's a good question. It just comes down to, would Giannis be interested in playing for them? Because if he is, the Blazers would logically have one of the best two-team packages.
No, there's not.
Giannis.
It's not one of. It's checkmate. If he's willing to go to the Blazers and the Blazers want him, or if the Blazers are willing to trade for him as a rental, the Blazers win. It's over. Unless like Houston gets in or San Antonio gets in, something like that. But like among the teams that we know to be interested, Portland beats all of them. And Portland beats all of them without giving up all of their stuff. Like they could make a trade pretty easily without including Deni Avdija. They have enough young talent that they could make follow-up trades afterward. The question here is, would the Blazers be willing to trade for Giannis on a rental? I suspect the answer to that is no. Or would Giannis be willing to go to Portland? I think the answer to that is probably no. I just don't want to close the door on that entirely for a few reasons. Obviously, the Blazers have a couple of former teammates of Giannis's. Drew Holiday is there. There's been reporting that Giannis would like to reunite with Drew Holiday. Damian Lillard is there. It didn't work out well for them in Milwaukee, but I think the circumstances are different, where now Dame is not coming back expecting to be an all-star. He's not making a max salary. He's making the mid-level. He's coming off of the Achilles. He's going to probably be a supporting player on next year's team. He and Dame and Giannis reportedly got pretty close in Milwaukee, at least on a personal level. There was that reporting when the Miles Turner stuff happened that Giannis was not happy that Dame had been waived. I know that was mostly PR cover, but seems notable. The other reason that I think Giannis might be a little bit open to potentially going to Portland is that contract stuff that I mentioned earlier. It's the same with Cleveland. If Giannis wants to extend this offseason, he has to get traded by the deadline. If he gets traded in June or July, he has to wait 6 months, which drags into next season. And given the calf injuries that he's had, he might not want to take that risk. I think he probably would like to be in a scenario where he gets traded in the next few days and he and the team he's going to have an agreement that in the offseason, he will agree to a 4-year, $275 million Supermax contract extension. So let's say the best offers out there are from the Knicks, are from the Warriors, or from the Heat, from the usual suspects, basically, the teams that we've talked about a lot. The Blazers, or the Bucks rather, might go to Giannis and say, look, the Knicks, the Warriors, the Heat, they have not offered us enough. We would rather wait until the offseason and see how things have changed. If it is very important to you to get traded before the deadline for the sake of that contract extension, the team that has made us an offer that we are willing to take is the Portland Trailblazers. Would you rather stay here for the rest of the season and we can sort this out over the summer? And at that point, maybe the teams that you want to go to have a little bit more to offer, can make a slightly more desirable trade offer. Or would you rather go to Portland now, knowing that you can extend with them over the summer? Now, there would still be some risk on Portland's part because he can't extend today, right? He has to wait until next October. That's the earliest that he can extend. So Portland would have to trust that if he gave them his word that he was extending, that he actually means it. But if he did, that's the scenario in which it would make a little bit of sense for Giannis to go to Portland. And then you talk about the basketball situation. Say, hypothetically, the trade package was all three of those picks from Portland going back to Milwaukee. And we'll get into there are some gymnastics that Portland would have to do to make that possible because there are other picks that are overlap with them, blah, blah, blah. I will explain that, I promise. But broadly speaking, Milwaukee gets those picks back. They get some other draft capital. They get Jeremy Grant as matching salary. They get Scoot Henderson back as kind of the premium young player. I actually think Milwaukee would be a great place for Scoot Henderson to continue his career because he could have the ball a lot there and they have a ton of shooting. Scoot's weakness as a player is that he's not a good shooter. If you surround him with shooting, you could kind of build like around the same way that Memphis built around Ja Morant or Oklahoma City with Russell Westbrook, where the spacing around him is impeccable and you could really maximize his speed. I guess Oklahoma City didn't really have great spacing around Russell Westbrook, but that was the idea, right? Like if you give a fast guard a ton of space, they'll be able to get to the basket much more easily. So I think Scoot in Milwaukee actually does make a fair bit of sense. And then you figure out like maybe one more key young guy, like maybe it's Shaden Sharp, maybe it's Donovan Clingan, maybe it's Yang Hansoon if that's their cup of tea. I don't know, but like one other young premium piece from the Blazers, and that's probably the best offer that the Bucks can get at this year's deadline. The Blazers would then keep Drew Holiday to play with Giannis, obviously. They would still have Denny Avdia, who they could have as not only a key piece next to Giannis, like somebody who's very good and very cheap, but if Giannis says like, oh, here's some other guy on some other team that I'd like to play with, go trade Denny Avdia for that guy, Portland could do it. They would have a fair amount of depth. We talked about that logjam. Vit Krejci, he'd probably look very good next to Giannis. Like a lot of the pieces align here. Do I think Portland would be a championship contender with Giannis? I'd have to see the whole roster. My inclination is probably worse than Oklahoma City, worse than Denver, worse than San Antonio, but like maybe fourth in the West and with room to rise depending on what else they did. So I mean, Portland doesn't really have that franchise guy, that all NBA, no brainer max contract guy. Giannis is a guy you can build around. So I think it does make some sense.
Okay, so I'm going to put up the Blazers draft pick situation. You guys can all see this on capsheets.com if you scroll down. So this is updated after the Blazers traded 2 seconds to the Hawks in that Vit Krejci trade. So they can trade up to 5 first-round picks right now. The maximum amount would be the picks in the even numbered years. So 2032, 2030, they're 228s, and then one of the 29s. They can do it like that. So in your opinion, these 5 first-round picks and Scoot, I would imagine you have to put into Monty Kamara, who would probably be marginalized at that point and not the greatest fit with Giannis. You think that tops, which would probably be the Warriors offer as the best offer right now?
No, do you think they might need by a mile?
By a mile. Okay. Yes. You don't think they'd have to throw in maybe Sharp to?
I'll take this a step further. Like, I think the Blazers could make a genuinely fair trade offer, right? Like a lot of these offers, the Knicks, the Heat, the Warriors, it's sort of like best Milwaukee can do, make the best of a bad situation. Portland's offer, I think, would be like mostly fair. If they got control over their own picks back, they got Scoot as like a younger guy to take a lottery ticket on, and then got one more good young player like a Kamara, like that to me is an unquestioned win. You've set yourself up to rebuild organically, which it didn't look like you were going to be able to do just a week ago. So I think that's a pretty good trade for Portland, or for Milwaukee, not just in the context of the situation they're in, but like overall, that's a situation where the Blazers or the Bucks in 2 or 3 years could have a nice young core and be looking kind of promising again. No other team can really give them that. Even the Warriors picks, which we think are pretty valuable, you're waiting years and years for those picks to bear fruit. This Blazers package could be pretty interesting pretty quickly. So to me, that's a no-brainer. Do you want me to get into the specifics of what they would have to do to give the Bucks their picks back?
Yeah, I'll let you take care of that. I don't feel like there's too many different combinations, right?
So basically, here's what it would be. The 2030 pick is just an outright swap. That's very simple. Portland could just say, we renounce our ability to swap first-round picks with Milwaukee in 2030. The 2029 pick is a little bit more complicated, but still fully within Portland's control. Portland has 3 first-round picks unprotected in 2029, their own, Milwaukee's, and Boston's. However, from the Denny Avdia trade, Washington is entitled to the second best of those 3 picks. So the way you work around that is you tell the Bucks, you get the most favorable of those 3 picks, which would probably be your own, but maybe you get lucky and we're terrible or Boston is terrible and you do a little bit better. But broadly, you regain the ability to tank in 2029. Pretty straightforward. Oh, I just knocked over my glass, but thankfully there's no water in there. Anyway, 2028 is where stuff gets kind of messy. You can't just renounce the swap rights that you have as Portland, because at last year's deadline, Milwaukee traded secondary swaps to the Washington Wizards in the Kyle Kuzma for Chris Middleton trade. Therefore, Portland would have to trade its own pick to Milwaukee with the caveat that the Bucks would keep the more favorable of Portland and Milwaukee's 2028 picks, and Washington would still get the lesser. Now, there's a holdup to that as well, because right now, Portland owes a lottery-protected 2026 first-round pick to the Chicago Bulls. Was that from the Lowry Markkanen trade?
Yes.
So that pick is lottery-protected for the next 3 years. It can convey this year, 2027, or 2028, and then after that, I think it just goes poof, or it maybe becomes a second-round pick. But there is a narrow scenario, however unlikely, in which Portland misses the playoffs in 2026 and 2027, but makes the playoffs in 2028. In that scenario, Chicago would get the pick in 2028, and Portland would not have a pick to swap with the Bucks for their swap rights. So they would therefore lose those swap rights, and they would therefore revert to Washington, who has them from the other trade. So how do you work around that? There are a couple of things you could do. The first idea is you could go to Chicago and say, hey, we are willing to remove the protections on our 2026 pick. You will get it this year no matter where it lands. And that way we guarantee that in 2028, we will have our own pick. You could do something like that with 2027 as well, but then you run into Stepien rule issues and that gets a little bit more complicated. So it's just cleaner to do in 2026. Plus, if the Blazers are getting Giannis, the Bulls might not want their 2027 pick. So that is one option. You could also go to the Bulls and offer them other draft capital in exchange for Portland's own 2026 lottery protected pick. Like Orlando, for instance, gave Portland a 2028 first round pick. Well, actually, I think that trade came from Memphis in the Cedric Coward trade. So yeah, Portland could trade Chicago Orlando's unprotected 2028 pick in exchange for their own lottery protected 2026 pick back, which would then enable them to give the more favorable of Portland and Milwaukee to Milwaukee in a Giannis trade, keeping the Washington swap intact because they would still be swapping with the lesser of Portland and Milwaukee. That is very, very complicated. If you are a little confused, I have written this on cbssports.com. If you want to refer to it, I have also tweeted it. If you want to tweet at me and DM me, I will copy and paste all of this for you. It is very complicated.
I'll put the link in the description.
It is very complicated, but all I am saying is it is hypothetically feasible for Portland to give Milwaukee back its control over its picks in 2028, 2029, and 2030. So that is all doable, is what I'm saying.
And I think the ammo they'd get in this hypothetical trade would make it easier for them to do a separate deal with the Wizards to try to get full control of that swap back. Maybe even they could figure something out to try to get, maybe there's something they could do with the Hawks next year to try to get control of their picks back. The Pelicans, I mean, probably unlikely, but I think that's kind of the step then if you're Milwaukee trying to reverse engineer getting all your picks back as much as possible. But no, I'm with you. If he's interested in Portland, I think you're right. They'd be in the driver's seat. I think it's interesting where there are a handful of teams you could point at and say the Warriors have one of the best offers, the Blazers have one of the best offers. Their offers aren't going to get better. So if neither of those teams acquire Giannis at the deadline, I'd assume either Giannis doesn't want to go to these teams or the Bucks just don't like these offers for whatever reason. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think Portland is the one offer that might be on a ticking clock because, like, imagine Giannis comes back in March for another team or for the Bucks, but more likely for another team, and gets hurt again. And then Portland's like, you know what? We'd rather just have your picks. Like, we don't really want to try. Like, I think timing actually would matter for Portland. There's something else that I want to talk about. I'm just trying to find my list. Okay. I want to talk about the value of those Portland picks because there's been a lot of talk about Portland facilitating a Giannis trade for somebody else by giving the Bucks their picks back. And some of the names that I've seen thrown out as possible targets for those Milwaukee picks, I don't think they're worth giving up all of the draft control. So I want to go through an exercise with you. Just, you can offer commentary as we go. I'm just going to throw this out there. I went through which players I would be willing to trade all three of those Milwaukee picks for, two of those Milwaukee picks for, and one of those Milwaukee picks for, because they are genuinely that valuable. I'm going to go through the list. Just offer any commentary you have. Okay.
All right.
So there are 23 players in the NBA that I would be willing to trade all 3 Milwaukee picks for. To be clear, I do not think these players are available even for all of these Milwaukee picks. I'm just saying that I would be willing to make the trade for. Those players are Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, Victor Wembanyama, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, Cade Cunningham, Luka Doncic, Scotty Barnes, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, Evan Mobley, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Jalen Johnson, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, Amen Thompson, Alperen Şengün, and Cooper Flag. Do you have any immediate disagreements?
My disagreement is pretty, I would say it's more of a hot take. Like, I'm more picky about that. There's maybe like 8 guys I would probably trade those picks for, but I'm on an island saying that. I think for the most part, everyone would agree with you.
Okay. These are the players that I would trade 2 Portland or 2 Milwaukee picks for. You, by the way, just to be clear, I am not saying only these picks. I'm saying I would be willing to trade 2 of those Milwaukee picks and other stuff. I just wouldn't be willing to give all 3 of those picks for. There are 11 players on this list. Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton, both of them would be on the first list if they did not have the torn Achilles, and both of them could easily make it back to the first list next year. I am just unnecessarily cautious when it comes to Achilles tears. Jaylen Brown, Jalen Duren, Denny Avdia, if he was on another team, like that's what his value would be. Stephen Curry, Trey Murphy, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Bam Adebayo, and Lauri Markkanen. Any thoughts on those players?
For the most part, yeah. 2, I think, would be okay. And I'd probably... Do you want to rank what those picks are? Is it by time or by that one of them's an outright pick?
Yeah, I think 2029 has to be the most valuable because it's the outright pick. And I guess 2030 is probably more valuable than 2028 just because of the time value, and you don't quite know what the Bucks are going to be in the near future. You want the time. So that reasonable to you?
I say 29, 30, 27.
Yeah. You mean 28.
Okay.
Not 27. Yeah.
Yeah, I would trade the lesser of those 2.
Gotcha. And then there are 29 players around the NBA that I would be willing to trade 1 of the Milwaukee picks for. Those players are OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Jaden McDaniels, Asar Thompson, Derek White, Darius Garland, Jalen Tyson, Anthony Black, Desmond Bane, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Matas Buzelis, LaMelo Ball, Alex Sarr, Egor Gemin, Pascal Siakam, Kason Wallace, AJ Mitchell, Tari Eason, Reed Shepard, Austin Reeves, Jaren Jackson Jr., Cedric Coward, Ivica Zubac, Ace Bailey, Derek Queen, Herb Jones, Jamal Murray, Devin Booker, and De'Aaron Fox. I think those last 3 players are the ones that you are going to have some concerns over because of the contracts. Truthfully, I put them on the list mostly so I wouldn't have to hear people yell about them. I would be scared of the contracts too.
Yeah, towards the end of your list, a lot of those guys like Herb, Fox, no. But in the beginning, like OG, McDaniels, Asar, I might be willing to do 2 for those guys of the least valuable ones.
That. So
of the least
like,
valuable
I think
ones.
OG is too old. Mikal isn't good enough. Asar, I have too many questions about the shot.
How old is OG?
OG is 28 or 29. He also has had some injury issues too. I don't know how well he's going to age.
I don't know. I'm just a little higher on him. I'm not as worried.
My broad point here is though, like this notion that the Knicks are going to have access to all of those Milwaukee picks from Portland, I think is far-fetched. I think they could maybe get 1, and I think Minnesota could maybe get 1, but I don't know that they're getting 2 or 3. I think if you're talking about giving up 2 or 3 of those picks, you're talking about trading for like an all-NBA guy or like a future star on a rookie deal. Yeah. That is very, very exclusive company.
Now, also, we got to keep in mind the context that the Blazers are probably trading other stuff as well. Yes. Like if it's Kamara, I think he's got like at least like 1 good first round pick worth of value, if not more, with that contract he just signed.
Just been a tough year for him though.
Yeah. So maybe Sharp has to be included. Scoot has got like some more of a flyer, but he would probably have value to the Bucks or some of these other teams that need a guard. So yeah, then when you keep that in mind, I think these valuations are reasonable.
Yeah. So the basic point again is I think this notion that anybody really has access to all those Milwaukee picks, except for Milwaukee itself, by trading Giannis is just kind of far fetched. Those picks are worth their weight in gold. Like those picks aren't quite as appealing to me as the Nets picks were when the Celtics made the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce trade. But I think it's a pretty similar idea where I think the Bucks, like depending on how this Giannis trade goes, might be so helpless for the next few years, especially in the flattened lottery odds age, by the way, because even if you think they're going to be like the ninth worst team in all of those years, the odds say that one of those years that pick could jump up. So
yeah,
those picks are like really, really serious trade assets.
Yeah, we this is more of like the explanation of you really going detail by detail why these picks are each valuable, because we both agreed in the beginning that in the likely scenario the Blazers do facilitate a Giannis trade, they're probably gonna keep some of those picks. They don't need to trade all of them to bring in a guy, whether it's OG, Jaden McDaniels, whoever it might be. So this is just more so to understand why that's the case. And if you look at historically, like this, what the Rockets have done, I mentioned this before with the Kevin Durant trade, they only had to trade one to get him. And that Brooklyn swap trade, they got to keep one of the Brooklyn picks. They still have control of it. So
can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So remember, Houston was very strategic about this. Houston gave the Nets control back of 25 and 26, but that made 27 more valuable, because if the Nets were going to be bad in 25 and 26, it meant it would be pretty difficult for them to get good in 27. So there was a little strategy there where they maybe went from three Nets draft assets to one, but the one that they kept was more valuable as a result of that trade. Portland could hypothetically do something similar where they maybe give up one pick or two picks, but then the third pick that they keep is that much more valuable. And then the last thing I'll say on this, Portland seems to be gearing towards trying to be more competitive now. The Drew Holiday trade foretold that. Other trades they have made kind of pushed in that direction. Some have argued that that's just like pressure from ownership, or the direction that the front office wants to go, or the natural direction of the team. I think maybe the reason that they were willing to do that was because they felt they had so much upside from the Blazers as far as getting lottery picks in the future that they didn't need to keep tanking, right? That they could be good for the next few years and still say, you know what, at some point at the end of the 2020s or early 2030s, we could get a franchise player from the Bucks, so we don't need to keep trying to tank for one. So that's something to keep in mind. When we bring up guys like OG Anunoby, Jaden McDaniels, Mikal Bridges, those guys are the highest end of role players, but they're still role players. The Blazers don't have a franchise player. Denny Avdia, hopefully, I mean, they announced the All-Stars like 2 hours from right now. Hopefully, Denny Avdia will make his first All-Star team. He deserves to make his first All-Star team. Denny Avdia is not like a franchise guy, somebody that you expect to be the best player on a championship team. Their path to getting that guy, their most likely path anyway, is one of those Bucks picks jumping to the top of the lottery. So that's something to keep in mind. The Bucks or the Blazers have plenty of role players. What they need is star upside.
Yeah. No, I think that's well put, Sam. Anything else on them, or should we discuss the one other thing that happened yesterday to wake us up in the morning?
Philly, let's do it.
Yeah.
Wait, want me to just say this from the start? We agree.
Sure, go ahead.
Blessing in disguise. This is a good thing for Philly on a number of levels. So you can get into the tax implications of this, and we'll have a lot to say there. I also just want to say, Paul George gets hurt a lot. Philly's super old. Do you kind of like the idea of Paul George not playing until the end of March? Because that means he can't get hurt again until the end of March, where like now you feel better about having him healthy in the postseason.
Yeah, you get to rest him. Thankfully, he's been looking good this year compared to last. So real quickly. So the Sixers, and I'd written about this on the Third Apron Substack. Go subscribe to it. Check it out if you're not subscribed to it yet. I was talking about teams that need to duck the tax, but essentially the Sixers, not only are they looking to get under the tax as they do every year, but they also still need to convert Barlow and Walker, who are running out of 10 two-way days on their clock. That they only get 50 active games. They're all Walker's about to run out like in 3 days. So the idea is they're probably going to have to trade a combination of Drummond and 2 minimum salaries. Maybe they might even have to trade Grimes or Oubre just in case to save that money and accomplish those goals. Now, Paul George gets a suspension. Since it's a league mandated suspension, the Sixers get a tax variance credit worth half that amount. So this suspension is going to cost Paul George about 11.8 million, something like that. So the Sixers now at the end of the season get this much money, $5.9 million deducted from their tax room. So instead of being 7 million over the tax, they're now just 1.3 million over the tax. So now that makes their path to ducking the tax while having enough space to convert their guys while staying under the tax much easier. Like now all they really got to do is dump 2 guys like Trendon Watford, Eric Gordon. They could do it. They've got 9 second-round picks that they could trade to make it happen. So, yes, blessing in disguise as far as keeping Paul George rested, ready for the playoffs. He'll be back end of March, but also for not having to decimate their depth. They can keep all their top reserves like Grimes, Oubre, Andre Drummond even. I would suspect they want to keep him. It's going to be harder to find a player as good who's making just as much or less, which is good considering Joel Embiid's recent comments about how he doesn't want the Sixers to duck the tax.
Yeah, how many years in a row have they ducked the tax? Has it been like 3 years and this would be the 4th?
Yeah. So the last time they paid the tax was the years that once they brought in Horford, that year they ducked they were in the tax, and then the year after when they traded for Harden, that also put them further into the tax. And then every year they started the season over the tax and they do moves to get under it. So this would be the 4th year in a row. And I think maybe Embiid's comments could have potentially kept them from doing it, but now with the suspension, it's just common sense for the Sixers to do it.
Daryl did this in Houston too. Like there was the James Ennis year where he did that. There were a bunch of minimum guys that they moved. Like this is a secret skill of Daryl Morey's, who I think is a very good general manager just in pure basketball sense, but he's also very good at moving money around for the sake of ownership. But yeah, Philly is like playing pretty well. So, I mean, I guess this could hurt them in the standings. I know the middle of the East is pretty compact. You might risk winding up in the play-in, which is unfortunate, especially just given how precarious the Joel Embiid situation is. Joel Embiid is playing so well now, by the way, that like there's a part of me that thinks when we name all-star reserves in a couple hours, he might get picked. Like he's certainly been like right now, he's certainly one of the 12 best players in the East. He's playing so well. I could see the Kings talking themselves into trying to trade for the contract.
No, it's possible. I haven't heard any all-star consideration for him, and I think it's just a little too soon. Like it's really the last like month and a half, and Embiid's been like consistently on the floor, and like really the last 3 weeks he's been playing at that level, closer to like what we are familiar with Embiid. So I'd be a little surprised if the coaches went that way, but at the same time, he's got the name brand. Maybe it'll work out this way. I'm not that worried about the Paul George suspension as far as their standings go. I'm pulling up Tankathon right now. They're currently the 6th seed in the East, 6 games over 500. Like, who is threatening to overtake them below them? I don't think it's the Magic. I don't really.
Miami
think
might get Giannis.
If the Heat, yeah, that's the one threat. Does the Heat get Giannis? But other than that, the Bulls aren't going to do anything. I don't think the Hawks are going to just magically flip a switch. So maybe they could fall off a tiny bit, maybe into the play-in range a little bit. But I would suspect that, thankfully, the timing is pretty opportune. Where now it's a trade deadline, so they could conceivably drop off a bit, but maybe they get enough from Edgecombe. Maybe Grimes will step up a little more. And then you get to March.
Jared McCain going.
Yes. And then you get to March, which is, a lot of teams don't play serious basketball in March. And I haven't looked at their schedule yet, but maybe that could be, they could start to rack up a lot more easier wins by then. So I'm not too worried. At worst, they fall like upper play-in territory, in my opinion, like a 7-8 seed. I feel like they should probably be able to weather the storm.
It says a lot about the Magic that neither one of us are really thinking that hard about them catching Philly. They're only a game and a half behind, but it has just been such a slog with them, especially lately.
Yeah. Now, the Sixers' upcoming schedule is going to be a challenge. They're about to start a 5-game road trip, all in the West, with the Clippers, Warriors, Lakers, Suns, Blazers. Then they play the Knicks. Then they start to see. Now, this month is actually kind of brutal. This is not going to be an easy month. Let me see what their strength of schedule is. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't checked strength of schedule in a while. Sixers have they have like a slightly below average schedule, but most of the teams are like 500 the rest of the way. I don't know. Maybe it's more so a testament to how good I feel like Embiid and Maxey have been recently, and I figure I'm pretty confident Edgecombe will step up. So maybe there is going to be a little bit of drop off. I don't think it's going to be like a significant drop off.
Yeah, I think they'll probably be okay. If nothing else, the vibes of this season have mostly been immaculate. If the terrible calamity to befall Philly this year is a Paul George suspension, by Philly standards, that's like the best calamity you could ask for.
Yeah. All right, Sam, should we wrap this up or anything else you want to touch on?
I think we covered everything from today, but I'm sure we will have plenty in the coming days.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Sam and I will be live as often as we can. Hopefully we get some more breaking news to react to, a couple more trades. For those of you who are new to this, please subscribe to Third Apron. Again, wherever you get podcasts, please leave a comment on the video, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Yossi Goslin on Twitter and Blue Sky. Sam on Twitter as well at SamQuinnCBS. We will have instant analysis on all the trades that happen. The best time of year to follow us. Read CBS Sports, as Sam says. Subscribe to the Third Apron Substack. I will be posting a lot of analysis on the trades as they come. And just be on the lookout for more streams. Goodbye, everyone.